Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of my podcast here. I have got a second round with Jennah-Louise here. First one we did, we actually recorded it, and at the end of their Zoom cut out and stopped the recording. So we're going plan two. So we're having our second conversation, but you're hearing the first one. So, JL, welcome back. Right. So from sunny Dubai.
Yes. So beautiful to be here with you, Greg. Really excited for this beautiful conversation.
So the backstory is that JL and I, we're in Peter Crone's mastermind, or multiple of them over the time, and she's been on Survivor. I've been on the one. You know, we've had sort of similarities around the world of reality TV, and so I thought it'd be good to catch up and connect. And she's a coach as well too, so I love getting perspective and aspects of other people, what they're doing, especially in the high performance space, because that's where you sort of work. You work in that very much that high executive, high CEO business executive space. And what I want people to understand is, why do these people perform at such a high level? What is it about those people and her? Because she does marathons, she's done 100K runs, she went through Survivor. She is high performance, and what does it take to be at that level? And then also, part of why the clients and stuff like that. So that's a bit of a rambling, but Jennah-Louise, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to dive in.
So tell us a bit about, a bit of an intro there. So tell us a bit about yourself and, what makes you tick and why you do what you do.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. I've had a lot. First and foremost, I'm a deep self-reflector. And so I feel like even since our former conversation, my answer is different and would be in a few months. I think what makes me tick and what makes me me is I'm a very curious spirit. I am certainly at a stage in my life where I am questioning everything. And so I find it really difficult to kind of land somewhere other than stating that I feel like I'm a deeply curious person that's constantly exploring, constantly self-evolving. And throughout my life experience and what I'm finding within my own sense of truth is that I'm sort of moving from this stage in my life where I'm being a mindset coach to high net worth, high achieving individuals, asserting my own sense of righteousness of what I believe is right or wrong or good or bad. And really got to a place in my life now where I'm beginning to help guide people to align with their own sense of truth. And what I've become to develop an understanding of now is that by myself aligning with my own sense of congruence and helping other people to, that's what is the amplification of our own sense of power. And so, yes, we can get out there and be high achieving. But what I found from my own experience of working with my clients is that's not always what it's all about. And a lot of our deep sense of achievement can come from a deep sense of inadequacy and unfulfillment. And so for me now, it's not only about high performance, but it's about understanding what is important to you. And are you living a life that is congruent, that is aligned with what is important and valuable to you?
So high performance is a trap, isn't it?
I think so. And I think it's very intentionally placed there as something that is of high status, because you see in this day and age, everything is so chaotic. What would life look like within the society that we live in if everything was not derived from a sense of high performance and the status that comes from that?
Because that then drives this purely outcome-based kind of reality as well too, right? Where our sense of self-worth is measured by something that's external to us, whether it's the car, the bank balance, the house, the car, or clothes, the relationships, the watches, the jewelry, all that kind of stuff, right? And that is this very, very slippery slope, because what I've probably noticed with you over the time is that you've got this blooming of this spiritual aspect of you. That the blend of the high performance and the spiritual aspect doesn't mean you're not high performance anymore, but like you said, there's this alignment to go, that's enough, Greg. This is where I am. The balance of having.
It's about aligning people with why you're doing what you're doing, because most people get on top of that first mountain, which is exactly that materialistic achievement that we speak to, and they still feel empty. And they're
Yeah.
still sort of like, why am I unsatiated where I've got everything that I ever desired that I thought would give me a happiness, fulfillment, sense of joy, connectedness. And yet I feel the same, if not worse. And I think that's
And
why
completely
it's
burned out.
and completely burnt out. And I think burnout is one of the, I've certainly experienced it. I think it's one of the more beautiful defining moments that we can have is that I feel like it's a gift from God, it's a gift from universe that's telling you, okay, enough of this, enough of focusing on proving yourself and self-abandoning through that process. I'm going to take you to that point of exhaustion where now you can't take one more step unless the next step is in line with starting to honor you and that sense of achievement.
You mentioned a word there, or two words, self-abandoning. Can you explain it a bit more?
Yeah, this is a really personal one to me. I feel like I've come to learn more and more because I would certainly identify as a high achiever. I was always honored as a high achiever at school. I had a law degree. I had a politics and international relations degree. I was a Canadian guide. I was a mindset coach. And we all have these things, ultra marathon runner. It's like we can have those list of things. And what I realized throughout progression, many of those things, not all, but a lot of them, was that I was not doing it for myself. I was doing it for the self-validation from others. And so it was this constant treadmill of having to continually do something to be able to kind of maintain this like low sustenance stage of self-connection that was based on the external validation of others. And what I realized when I began to connect with that deeper, that it was less about external validation and more a reflection of my own self-abandonment and self-rejection that I had within myself, and that it wasn't about me having to achieve more to receive more. It was about me actually slowing down and starting to connect with myself and understand, why am I so fragmented and fractured within myself? Where did this come from? Why is it here? And how do I overcome this into a new place where I'm more connected with myself and I'm more living from my own sense of authenticity and spirituality in this lifetime than from being someone that is constantly not present because I'm continually evaluating and analyzing my external environment instead of actually being connected with my eyes as a self and my own sense of intuition.
That's pretty raw. That's
Yeah.
one, I want to commend you on those comments. I've been there myself, and that's the reason why we do what we do, right? Is because we've been there. We've had that kind of experience, that everything that who you are is this kind of you're chasing this thing, you're chasing this dragon you can never get. And a lot of success, and as you know, a lot of success is born from trauma. A lot of it is. So once you get to the point of, maybe I grew up with not enough money, maybe I grew up with a sense of not being loved enough and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of people's success, I would say a majority of people's success, is driven from a fear of not being safe.
Absolutely. And I mean, when you speak to that, a memory came up of a former client I have. He was very high up in a sort of top 100 company in Australia. And I sat down with him and we were starting to talk about the very things that we're talking about. And he said, Jennah, but what happens if I lose my motivation or what I'm currently doing? And I thought that was such a potent and raw thing to say, because it made me realize when he says that, he's not speaking from his sense of self. That's the self-abandonment that we're speaking from. He's speaking from that sense of fear. And that's what I think stops a lot of people, is that they understand, they get to a point where they recognize that something's a little off, or maybe massively off if you go into burnout. And they understand that if they were to truly face what they're experiencing in their life, that fear, that their life may dramatically change. And you and I were speaking about this before we pressed record. That's where that courage comes in. That's where that sense of bravery comes in, to be able to understand that in order to honor yourself, your life may dramatically change. But do you have the courage and bravery to be able to honor that in this lifetime?
And that's because we are dealing with some big egos. Like, there's no two ways about it. People have built images and businesses and families and external, things. And that's a very, very big thing to sort of just challenge, because your sense of self-worth, your sense of identity, sense of who you are is built in this kind of very, very crumbly framework that, well, what happens if people realize that this was only ever from a place of trauma, or I've never felt safe, or I've never felt needed, or I've never felt like a lot of, I've had a couple who were, one was highly successful because he got rejected from a girl when he was 16, and he became a tech giant purely because he wanted to have the hot girlfriend, and that was a disaster to start with. And or the sense of I'm not seen, or I'm not validated, or I'm not heard. So we overachieve to try and get this. Look, people are looking at me now, and I'm getting that sense of validation or sense of self-worth because of that. And when you challenge that, it can be very, very, very courageous, like you said, to do that, because a lot of people just want to keep the illusion up and keep just burning out and burning out and burning out. Yeah, you can only sustain yourself for so long.
I mean, the fear is derived from a seeking of a sense of comfort. And so by facing that sense of fear and that ego, you are automatically putting yourself into a state of discomfort, which in the society that we grow up in is very not aligned with that aspect of growth that is necessary to be able to fully authentically align. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because even as we say at the start, like, we're full of big egos at the moment, and all I hear is there's so much fear. There's so much fear in our society at the moment. And I think a lot of people don't understand that when they see people with big egos. We can have the tendency to get intimidated even by people like this. And for me, that was a huge part of why I began to work with high achievers, is because I'm so curious about what it means to be human. Is that beautiful understanding that those people that you may be intimidated by or that you look up to are fighting the same fights that you are. Exactly. They're experiencing the same pain. They're experiencing the same suffering, possibly in different aspects. But that big ego that you see, they still lay in their bed at night at times and have very similar fears.
Imposter syndrome, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, it's just manifested another way. That's all it is. It's just the same fear in just a different area. Like, it's the guy who goes to the gym. I think I don't know who said this. Can't remember who it was. Might have been Peter. The guy who's got the Mercedes and the six pack has probably got the same trauma as the guy who's the heroin addict. They just manifest in different ways. Right?
It's the adaptation, and some people, I suppose, quote unquote, are more fortunate than others. And there is next to no difference between the homeless person that you see in the street that's addicted to heroin or addicted to drugs and the CEO that's addicted to work. It's all derived as an adaptation and compensation that was developed, as you said, in even the people that your clients that you have. It's derived from an earlier experience, and some people go left and some people go right. But at the end of the day, it's basically the same manifest. Derived
what
from
are the consequences of some of that stuff? Like, so what do you see some of the main consequences of people having that need to, the overachieving worker, the overachieving C-suite, the overachieving entrepreneur? What are some of the drawbacks of having that? Because there's this fine line, because, as a business owner, entrepreneur, you need to work the hours, you need to put the time and effort in. As to be at that level and be a C-suite executive or whatever it is, you need to have that time and effort. What are some of the the consequences you see with people putting in so much of that effort into that identity?
I see them miss life. Where are you? Where are
Correct.
you? You're in
Not
your
at your kid's
head,
birthday, yeah.
and you're in the future. And
Yeah.
there's always constantly something to do. And people aren't present. And I think that is a huge drawback. Now, I think there is a time and place for that. But again, where does your motivation come from? If it's from fear and a sense of inadequacy, then I would encourage people to reflect on that. But if it's from this deep sense of internal knowing that you were here to make a big impact, and there are certain sacrifices that are required to make in order to do that, then to continue to keep connecting with that. So I think it always comes down to the motivation. But what I see in a lot of C-suite people is that it's generally the first. It's to continually reinstate myself as someone that has authority, power, status, and is highly capable of doing certain things. I do feel like there is a healthy sense of competition that is important for someone, and obviously having goals and working towards them. I just think for me, I work in the line of like, when is it that you get to that point in which you feel like you have to need to do something versus want to choose to do something?
So which leads me into the next thing is that what's it like to be with someone in the presence of that experience who embraces the power of self-awareness? Because I mean, there's this big fear, right? And I've got a lady coaching right now. She's got listeners to this die, and she's like, "Holy shit, Greg! You know, I was so fearful of this." But stepping in the power of self-awareness and very much the spiritual aspect of life, she said her performance has gone through the roof, like literally through the roof. So what are some of the things that you see that, you know, there may be fear at the start of jumping into the path of self-awareness, but then what actually happens when you do jump down that path?
Well, I think it's exactly what you spoke to. I think it sort of goes one of two ways. One way is exactly that someone is still wanting to be part of what they're currently doing, and they can lean into it with a deeper sense of vitality and energy because they're no longer coming from an authentic place that derives a sense of exhaustion, because it's very difficult not being ourselves. It's actually quite tiring. So I feel like it can go that way. And or it can go the other way, which tends to be a bit more difficult, is that people have profound awakenings in their life that can be, and this is certainly what happened to me twice in my life, where it's basically a savage undoing of self and everything that you thought was you, and then it's a rebuilding up from there.
What's the savage unbuilding of you like? Sometimes it's like it's that tower card in the tarot. It's just hold on for the ride, and this is part of the new beginning and the rebirth. Like you said at the start, you're rebirthing of yourself. What's that like?
It's awfully, I mean, I'll speak from self-experience. I think that will be the most important place. I have experienced it twice. I've experienced it when I was 27, and I've experienced it certainly sort of towards the end of last year, only this year. So it's been quite a recent experience for me. It's interesting because I think when you've got support, it is easier. I think to do something like this on your own, I wouldn't recommend it, because it can be incredibly painful, psychologically and physically. And there's a lot of chaos that ensues before the order kind of comes into the center. And I think when you don't quite understand the purpose and meaning behind the suffering, it can certainly be something that creates deep distractions. And you can actually make this beautiful opportunity a lot worse for yourself if you don't know how to move through and process the pain. And I think because we do live in a society where we're being taught to run away from pain or sedate pain, it could be quite a raw experience for someone that's processing on their own and not quite having a deep experience like that, and understanding that it's kind of like Kali energy, your Kali goddess. It's like then there is destruction in order to create. And that's where I really feel this, the essence of an experience like that. It's like you cannot go around it. You cannot
It's a
numb it.
surrender, isn't it?
You
It's a
cannot
real
go under
surrender.
it. You have to surrender. It's
Yeah.
I wrote recently, to become truly powerful, you will have to get on your knees. And I feel like it's that deep sense of surrender and just being like, I will no longer be at the forefront of controlling this, and I have to completely just put my hands up in the air and hand it over to whatever it is that you believe in. And then from there, you can start making space. When I was in India, it was really interesting. I had a Reiki master teacher, and he said to me, one time pain is better than always pain. And it was so simple, but it really landed for me, because it just very proved in that moment that we're so used to this underlying sense of suffering that we don't quite understand that if we kind of just face the suffering and experiencing that deeper sense of pain, if only for a fraction of time, we'll be able to relieve ourselves and free ourselves from that underlying sense of suffering and continue to move forward. But I think for many of us, because particularly in the society that we live in at the moment, if we experience any form of discomfort, there is a drug to help you with it. We aren't necessarily in a space where we have the education to understand that being normal isn't about only being comfortable. Being normal is also to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be human, which is sadness, which is depression at times, and certainly is grief. And I think that's what I see within myself and a lot of my clients when we go through something like an undoing, is that there is a lot of grief that comes from this, because exactly what we spoke to, the realization of that self-abandonment that was once unconscious. Because we live life and we think this is who we are, and we are what we do, and we are what we have. And then all of a sudden, when you have the awareness to realize that you're not actually any of those things, all those things are transitory, you aren't anything that can change. It can be a real moment for people. And I think we live in a society that if more and more people were to awaken in that sense, our society would dramatically change. I'm not sure if that's what the higher authorities want. And so if I give you a pill and you can sedate that sense of curiosity, then everything sort of stays the same. And so even recently I wrote, meaning is not derived from the sedation of suffering, meaning is derived from the suffering itself. And so if you understand that in every piece of suffering you experience, there is meaning and wisdom to derive from that, as long as you understand that you had the capacity to face that, and then you had the capacity to integrate that, every sense of suffering is a gift in your life.
That's a very it's I got my coach John, who just talked about that, about our ability to have resilience through life and be able to go into it. We were talking about the hero's journey and the heroes, and it sounds like we have these themes through our lives where we're constantly on this hero's journey of awakening, of going through this metamorphosis of finding who we truly are. And like it's this avoidance of suffering that keeps us stuck, because we have this fear around the fact that this is going to hurt. But it's
and there's nothing, honestly, one of the most potent experiences in my life, Greg, was when I recognized that for the first time at that 27-year-old, I fully faced all of that pain that I was repressing. I felt so powerful because I realized when I faced it, it wasn't that painful. When you're sitting in pain, recognizing that you're sitting in the pain, and you have the courage and bravery to do that, there is something that is so almost ecstatic experiencing about it. Because when you face it and you're no longer scared of yourself, it awakens something within me that just truly went, I can experience anything in this lifetime. And I know now I will be able to get through it.
And that's the it sounds amazing that you took like there was a massive accountability in that space as well too, because
Yeah,
a lot of people walk through life blaming everybody else that they've done this, they've done
absolutely.
that, someone said this, someone said that, right? In that space of that fear is this. There's two things. There's one that the sense of failure starts to go, well, welcome to the club. Here we go. And the second part is that the only person responsible for my life is me, and the way that I see
Yes.
things, the nature of thought itself, right?
This is where all of my self-awareness came from. And it was, again, at that 27-year-old page, was the first lesson was self-responsibility. And it's so simple to understand, and I think that's why people take it for granted. But when I
Yeah.
actually legitimately implemented self-responsibility into my life, everything changed. Everything. And it's not 99%, it's 100. 100% of self-responsibility. There is
Yeah.
no excuses, no subjectiveness. It is 100% responsibility. And even with the clients I work with, I will refuse to work with anyone that does not tell me they understand what self-responsibility means and they are entirely committed to it. I will not work with anyone that does anything other than that, because it is an absolute necessary part of self-transformation and self-growth, is to
Yeah.
understand that if you were just to truly just sit today and notice how much we project, blame others, and we started reflecting that mirror back on ourselves, that is the initial step into that true sense of empowerment.
Oh, wow. Take that, people. It's huge. Like it is, because you know we work with a very select group of people, right? And then you've got on top of that, people who want to make change, and
Yeah.
people who say they want to have the life, or they want to do this, or want to do that. But as soon as it gets to the point of saying, well, it's a little bit of investment in money, it's like, oh no, I can't do that. Or no, that's too expensive. Or that's no, that's not in alignment with me. Oh no, I'm just going to go and think about it, or something like that. There's every excuse in the face of the planet as to you've got this level of people who are high performers. There's what's the difference between the people who want to get there and make every excuse, and the people who do invest in themselves and like they never get there, right? But you know where I'm sort of coming from, that start to make
Yeah.
some serious shifts in their I suppose the way they see life and happiness and success, what they want to do.
Yeah, I feel like people are motivated by like that state of desperation or inspiration, right? So it's like you either get to that burnout period where you feel like you can't go any further without some support, or that sense of inspiration. So, it's up to us to be able to articulate and have them picture what it is that they will actually, but what the actual cost in life is, the actual cost in life versus the investment of money that they'll be losing if they don't invest that money. And I think most people are innocent in the sense that they actually don't understand the life that they could be having right now, that they are missing because of the life that they are currently attached themselves to, in the sense of self-identity and that sense of ignorance, because we don't learn these things. We talk about self-awareness as if it's some amazing concept. And it's like, why are we not taught this in schools? And so it continually brings a sense of compassion from me to people, because it really is about finding your own way in this journey of self-awareness. And for most of us, we don't connect with this until we are in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, sometimes even later. And so I think the difference is, one, having the fortune of being able to connect with the idea that there is something more than what they're currently experiencing. But then two, what is the motivation? Have they hit that wall, or are they able to understand that what they have right now is not as powerful as what they could? But this is what I also understood, Greg, as well, is that this seems to be the realm for growth-oriented people, and not everyone is. And
Yeah,
so it's
correct.
also about, right? So it's also about
Yeah,
me, and this is where it came back to at the start. I've understood through the 5 years of coaching high achievers that it's less about me asserting my own sense of righteousness and what I think is right for people, because it's what I think is right for myself. But understanding that some people do like a more simple life, a more consistent life, a more stable and comfortable life. And they're very happy with that.
Yeah.
And so it's not up to me to say, hey, but you could have this and you could have the self-awareness and you could, they might just not be interested. It might just not be their journey in this point. And for me to be able to have spaces for that as well.
Let's talk about comfort zones. What are they like to destroying people's dreams?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I feel like I've been very fortunate with this one. I feel like I never really had to learn this lesson. I feel like it's always been very innate. And I think that's by virtue of being that growth-oriented kind of person. I just always really enjoy putting myself out of my comfort. I get a lot of fulfillment out of it. I think for people that are awakening, that have that little bit of sense of like, I feel like there's more, but all I've ever known is ease and comfort. I think it's about taking small steps. I think it's taking small steps. But I think it can also be throwing yourself in the deep end. Like you mentioned, I do ultra marathon running, and even when people speak to me about this, they're like, oh, so obviously you did like your marathon and like, oh, you did your 5K and I'm like, no, I'd run about 4Ks. And then I decided that I could do 10. And then all of a sudden I wanted to do an ultra marathon. And I had never done a marathon before, an ultra marathon. And it's like, you just get out there and get it done. And of course, physically, there's preparation that is important to do. But people are more concerned with not being ready in the mindset rather than just throwing yourself in and see how far you can get. Like, don't be so, speaking to what you spoke to, don't be so afraid of failure. Like, I get so much enjoyment out of being able to not finish something because I'm like, oh, okay, like I got a taste of the current limit. I've got a line in which I can now go further from. That excites me. You have to connect with that sense of excitement when it comes to something like expansion, getting out of your comfort zone. Because if there's fear, it will always continue to stop you. So it's almost like a reframe of understanding that, like, it's not about failure. It's about giving yourself a connection with your own sense of potentiality right now and understanding that just continually expands.
Yeah, because there is something at the core for somebody who doesn't go down this journey of investing in themselves or going down that self-awareness path, which is what happens if I do invest in it and I realize I can't do it. And then that's pretty huge, because that in itself is like, well, I'd rather stay where I am and not ever find out, because the pain is actually worse for me for going down there and doing it, figuring out that in the end I just don't have it. I just don't have the guts and the courage, and I just can't do it because and so I find for a lot of people, it's, that's the fear, for the barrier for some people to go, well, I'd rather just stay where I am because I know it's safe. It might not be the best life. I may sit here and whinge about shit all day about this and that, and I'll see people on Instagram with all the stuff, that the success, the perceived success, but I'll just be happy being miserable.
I feel like everyone has the guts and everyone has the courage. I do. I think you're lying to yourself if you think that you don't. I think the only limiter is possibly, sometimes it can be physical. If I went to be a professional basketball player, it probably wouldn't end out well for me. There are some restrictions, but I think there's a small amount of restriction. And I think everyone, if it requires that inner sense of courage and spirit and bravery within you, you have that within you. It's just about connecting with it. But again, if we haven't been inspired through the way that we're being brought up to be able to connect with that, I understand that it seems like it's maybe something that cannot be experienced, because possibly it isn't something as of yet that you've been able to experience. And I think that's what's so beautiful about shadow work as well, is understanding that anything that draws inspiration for you from another person is something that's part of you by virtue of our mutual humanity. And so it's like anything that you're inspired by in another, if it is courage and that sense of bravery, you have that within you. And I think what helps with that is then being able to surround yourself with more and more people that are like that, because you begin to quickly integrate on an even deeper level of unconsciousness, that now integrating that part of you that may be repressed is safe because you're around like-minded people that are doing the same and aligned with what you want to.
So in that space, it'll really take, and this is the importance of having a guide or a coach in that space, someone like yourself, right, to be able to do that. And that's the really important part, is to understand that, like, as everyone's got the ability, it just takes someone very masterful to help you uncover that.
Yes, I mean, I have a lovely relationship with the coaching space. I'm really trying to figure out what I would even call myself these days. A guy and seeing the closest thing, but I do think you have to be. You do have to be careful with who you choose. I think it's not about going with just anyone. I think it's almost that, little lesson in intuition about who you feel like pulls you in and feel like you can connect with. Yeah. It's less about the tools and all of that stuff that we can give you, and it's more about the level of vulnerability and connection that we can connect to as the mutual relationship that is invested in your expansion of potential, that I think is of utmost importance, beyond any sort of expertise that can come with that too.
You mentioned the word there, like that in itself. I and this is me being completely biased on this, and I'll open to that. The best shepherds out there, let's call them that, are highly intuitive.
Highly intuitive? Yeah, they are.
It's just
they are because they... Oh, I love this. This is making me all excited because we're speaking. It is because, as you would know, and this is what I feel separates me from many coaches, and I wish you knew as well, is we feel the unseen. We feel the energy beneath the words. So we don't take what you're saying at face value. We ask questions, and we can feel the incongruence within your answers. And that's our magic. That just gave me goosebumps. That's certainly... And
you can't teach. I mean, it's a skill set you sort
and
of...
you can't teach that.
It's just... It's very... You can teach to a certain point. And... yeah... Again, it's this is the way I sort of say it, right? Is that you can learn to play piano, but then you have Mozart and Beethoven.
Yes. I think that we all have strength in different modalities. I mean, I have a beautiful friend who's a coach, and he is the most Mozart visualization person I've ever met. Just beautiful. Yeah. But for me, I really struggle to picture anything in my mind. But if I'm in the room with someone and I've never met them before, I know a hell of a lot more about them than they probably want me to know about them, which is a beautiful gift as a coach and mentor, because we are right there very quickly, because we can feel the unseen. We can feel what even they may be blind and ignorant to.
But even that space, because I find the intuition allows you just to be free, because what happens in the coaching session is not a session, it's an experience. It's a place that you sort of go to, that you walk out there and going, what the fuck just happened? It's not sitting there going, now, so we talked about this last week. Now, let me get my little piece of paper out. And
What's your name again? Did we do this tool last week?
Right. I got people rock up and they go, where are your notes? I go, I've got no idea what I'm going to say. You're going to sit down. I'm just going to free ball, and that's all I ever do. People say, "What's your process?" Just sit here and ask questions.
Trust and faith.
It is. Before someone sits, I've got no idea what I'm going to say. Like, I've got no clue. It's like, okay, and then just bang, 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 bang. It just flows in, right?
It's beautiful,
and that's the experience.
It is the experience, and I think you have to be ready for that. Because that's what I found in relation to working with many C-suite people. Not everyone is ready for that. They want the structure. They want that sense of certainty, because that's what makes them feel safe, and that's what they're knowing. And so when you go into realms of feeling and intuition and experience, it's very uncomfortable for them. And some people are ready to expand their sense of self through that, and some people are not. And I think that's coming back to where we started this point, is be intuitive, or at least connect with that gut feeling of what kind of coaching and mentorship would you like. But obviously we're biased, and I think what I've recognized, because I've obviously had coaches myself, is I always tend to derive a lot more progress and self-awareness from those that are able to feel more than what I share on what I would suggest is more of that superficial level.
What happens to someone when they start tapping into intuition?
You know, it's interesting what just came to me, which is what I spoke about before. I feel like there's a lot of grief. I feel like there's a lot of grief that can come up for people because it's such a homecoming. And I think the way in which we have been conditioned and programmed is away from that power. And so then we begin to connect with that sense of internal power that's always been there. It's been through everything in our lives. It's seen everything. And that level of self-abandonment it's experienced, I think there can be quite a sorrowful and emotional experience initially. But then as we begin to integrate and we begin to feel that sense of power, that's when the magic happens in life. That's when the synchronicities happen. That's when you realize that you don't have to try so hard on everything, that things will literally, opportunities will magnetize into your life. People will come into your life. You'll have those moments where you're like, what the hell was that? That was amazing. That's so unexplainable. But there's such a deep level of trust and surrender that comes into having an experience like that, because straight away you'll realize, like, then the ego telling you, like, no, you have to consider this, you have to analyze this, you have to think about all these things, you have to figure out before you do that. And I've read something recently which was really beautiful around, like, having the courage to make unreasonable decisions based on your intuition. I think that is so beautiful, because what you'll find with your intuition, it's not always going to be reasonable. It's not always going to make sense with all the information that you have. But in time, in my experience, it always makes sense.
The word too, I mean, some stuff here is just so weird, it's not funny, right? Because I haven't said this to anybody, and I don't think I mentioned this last time to you, but the most common thing I say to people when they sort of finish each other, it gets in 3 or 4 months. It's like, Greg, I'm home. Feels like I've come home.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned that, and you said that it was just like, I feel it's a thing, a sense of coming home. And until you've actually said those words and experienced it and felt it, it's very hard to explain, isn't it?
It is. It's very hard. And that's why, even that, I feel that it makes me emotional, because it's a deep experience of peace, internal peace, that I think most have not experienced. And sadly, I would say most do not experience. And I think a lot of these things can become quite cliche, like, oh yeah, coming home to yourself, okay. It's hard to connect with, but when you actually get guided back to what that truly feels like, you know what that means.
It's not something you can think. It's
not something you can think. I was reading about this recently, like, even the idea of, like, everything is energy, and we're living in a certain band of frequency, and where the heart resonates is outside of the frequency in which we think and we experience this world. And so it's being able to trust that heart-led, intuitive-led decisions that aren't learned by the chaos of what we're currently experiencing in this lifetime.
Because there's a lot going on.
A lot of that deeper sense of trust and faith in that.
Yeah, because the ability to not only transform your life, but transform every aspect of your life. Like you said, you no longer go searching for stuff, but you still have goals, you still have aspirations, you still have these. So people kind of think that all of a sudden I'm going to sit on the couch, I'm going to do nothing, I'm going to eat.
I'm going to go to India and sit in a cave, and that's going to be me. no,
but you just
not at
find
all.
your goals are much more heart center aligned, and you go at
Yes.
them like you do. The passion doesn't stop, right? You go at it with so much
Oh
power,
no.
because the power you
You
have in that space, like it it's very, very hard to explain to people. It's not a power kind of like we have in the most people's world about power. It's like, no, this is a whole other aspect of the word power. It's
Yes, it
so
is. It
deep.
is utilizing the energy that we are, and I feel like it's limitless. That's how it feels, right?
Mm,
Because as we spoke to us, when you do not live from that heart-centered place, eventually you will burn out. Like it's
mm.
physics in the physical realm. Things break down. You put a lot of stress on it, it's going to break down. You hear of the heart attacks, all of that stuff, autoimmune diseases all the time. And so when you live from more of that heart-led space, it just comes from that space of vitality and energy. And personally in my life, it's like, yeah, there is no burnout. There's this constant fire burning from within, just wanting to continually give. And I think so much of that heart-led stuff very naturally comes back to being of service for others. And so there's like this beautiful symbiosis that happens when you start to connect with self, stop self-abandoning, is that you actually are able to provide and contribute a lot more in this world, which gives that feedback of having a deeper sense of meaning in our life as well, versus going to work because we feel inadequate and we've got to prove ourselves, and I love that car and I love that house and I'm going to show that holiday on my Instagram, and then I've got all this debt and I'm going to get another credit card, and it's just a different way to live, life to live. You can have all of that, but if you're able to come from a heart-centered space, all of that is experienced on a different level and very differently. And the way in which that energy expand outwards into the people around you, which is very different as well. You'll have deeper connections, and again, then you'll have that deep sense of meaning.
And then life just is an experience of something and this is the thing, it's just this experience of just pure joy. Whatever happens, like it's, you've chosen to experience that for whatever reason. And again, you look at life through the lens of perspective. I remember it's one of those things the CIA have been pumping out for people for the last, however years, about perception versus perspective, right? Or the way you perceive things, right? How you perceive stuff is how you see yourself. Perspective is stepping back a bit and actually looking at a bigger picture. You get the power of that, in that space that, when you have the self-awareness, you have this other superpower that drops in called perspective, and then you can sort of sit back and kind of go the observer effect, and life becomes this thing where you're no longer rushing around to try and get somewhere, to try and feel an inadequacy or some void inside yourself because you may have a story when you were a kid that, you didn't get something, right?
But I think with where you started that, it reminds me, I think it's an Einstein quote. He said something along the lines of like, life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be experienced.
Beautiful.
And I thought that was it just hits the nail on the head of everything that we are speaking to. Is understand that when you are so connected with your ego, you will constantly be having problems to be solved. And when you begin to bring a level of awareness into your life, you realize that once you solve one problem, another one will come up, and another one. But when you're able to actually, as you said, take that extra step back and actually be able to be the observer of your life, you start to appreciate that all these things that our perspective is telling us are problems could also just be mysteries, and that we don't have to be the problem solver of absolutely everything in our life, and that there is actually some grace and fulfillment that can come from leaving a little bit of mystery and having an appreciation and reverence for that.
Yeah, and this is the thing you mentioned before about magic, right? Because magic, when you step into this place, and this is what I want people to understand, is that the people that JL works with, it's serious magic. Like, this is alchemy of some serious stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that, is life an illusion?
That's a big question.
Are problems an illusion? Like, are they actually just made up? Like, yeah.
Yeah, one of my mentors you just spoke, Peter Kern, right? He speaks about this, Like the only problem you have is thinking that you have a problem. And I remember years ago when I first heard that, it really gave me that entry point into thinking, wow, what would my life look like if I never saw anything as a problem? But rather, a mystery to be experienced. And what is it that there's certain mysteries in my life? What are the ones that I'd like to be curious and explore more of? And it's certainly a frequency change, an experience change in life, and being able to look at life from that perspective. Again, it's just a different kind of energy, going back to that heart-led energy. It's like when I think of my life like that, it like revitalizes me. I feel it within sort of my heart and solar plexus, that it lights up, and it's like there's some form of truth within that perspective that feels like it is good for us. And I think that's where I've come to as well. I've had autoimmune diseases in my life, and that's why I'm so passionate about that sense of self-abandonment, because I feel like autoimmune diseases are the physical representation of this self-abandonment. And when we're able to reconnect with our sense of self, our sense of heart and intuition, it is actually physiologically better for us to experience in this lifetime. So whether this sounds so woo-woo for you that you're like, this is too spiritual for me, if there is any sense of unhealthiness in your life or disharmony within your body, if you were to actually just start living from that perspective, I would have no doubt, and I'd actually have conviction that your health would improve with that, because you're acting more in harmony with yourself and life.
Yeah, and self-abandonment is such a, I think, probably a misconception as well too, because people kind of think your self-abandonment in itself wouldn't happen with people who are highly successful. But as you said before at the start, it is probably, a very big reason why they are at that level, that is an aspect of self-abandonment. And people kind of think it's the, people who've got depression or anxiety or major mental health issues, right, that kind of abandon themselves. But, on the other end of the spectrum, it's actually pretty much like we said at the start, the same.
Well, I mean, self-abandonment can be as simple as someone asking how you are and you say good when you are not. It's as simple as someone asking you to do something, you say yes when you mean no. My belief is, and in my life experience is, even those things feel small, they build up. And every time that you self-abandon, there is a certain element of that negative energy that we store in our body. That's how it feels for me. And so over time, if you were a people pleaser, for example, which a lot of high achievers are, then got to where they are because they're yes people, you come to a state of recognizing that a lot of those small choices that you've made over your life, over the years, even over the decades, lead you into this deeper sense of fragmentation, all because you haven't been able to have the courage to be able to say no when you mean say yes when you mean no. And so I think it's
go. You go.
there you go.
I was going to say, so it's a very, like, those small incremental things are like little bits of the glass shattering off the thing. It's just a little piece, and all of a sudden the whole thing shatters.
Have a little bit of mind. Yeah, it's like it's not equal to this, but it feels like it's like have a little bit of my soul, have another little piece of my soul, have another bit, and it's like and that's why, again, I feel like when we come home to ourselves, there's grief, because we recognize how much of our lives is spent pleasing others rather than connecting with self and having the courage and bravery to live from that. Because it's not easy. This isn't all love, light, butterflies and rainbows. When you actually truly connect with self and you honor yourself, that's a scary place to be in, because it does create separation in your life. It can create isolation. It can also create condemnation. People will start talking, or who is this person that's changed? Who is this person that has the courage to be able to say their truth? How dare they say something that's different from the norm? How dare they say no to me? It's like there is a level of deep bravery that is required to live a life of self-ownership, and that's why not many people do it. But it doesn't mean that it's not worth it. And that's why it comes back to being able to get a coach, guide, mentor, and go find a community of like-minded people that are living from that place, because that only empowers you to remain true to that. Because if you're doing it alone, it's very difficult if you already feel a sense of isolation because you self-abandoned your whole life. And then you come to self, and then you start living yourself, and the people that you've known and have been comfortable around start to not be able to accept who you're becoming, because it creates discomfort within themselves, because it starts awakening them. It's very easy to just go back into the norm and back into your little box and back into that compartmentalization of self-abandonment and comfort and making sure that everybody else is okay. So I always really say, like, it's important to have people in your life that are on the same journey as you, to ensure that when times get tough, and they inevitably do, but back to what we're saying, that doesn't mean it's not the true path for you. That you're able to lean on that sense of courage and bravery, because it's something that not only you are about, but the people and the tribe around you are about, and you can continue forward. And then through that, that expands out, obviously, into other people awakening.
What a great way to finish. What a fabulous way to finish.
Put on your favorite dress, your favorite suit, and get out there and be you. Be you. Like, I'm so passionate about that. Like, oh my God, again, like, do you want the always pain, or you want the one-time pain of being like, I've had enough of my life. I've had enough of conforming to other people's expectations and self-abandoning myself through saying yes when I mean no, or pandering to other people's bullshit. Wake up, own yourself, have the courage and bravery to start acting on that. And find people in your community, in your space, online, coaches, mentors, anyone, to be able to ensure that you stay on that path as it inevitably gets hard. That every sense of hardship, as we said, every sense of suffering has meaning in it. And that meaning is to help you to continue to grow, continue to expand, and then be able to inspire that expansion of potential for other people that are not yet where you are at.
You are just the bulb, the magnificent. I do have a question. My picking spot though. What would you say to that? What would you say to that 27-year-old version of you now, if you could go back in time and meet her and look her in her eye? And what would you actually say to her?
I would say it's okay. I'd say it's okay. You know, it's okay. You're going to be okay. And I'm so proud of you. Like, life isn't easy. It's not.
No, it's not.
Life is really difficult. And I think life is difficult, full stop. And then when you start to be brave enough to recognize there's something more for you in this lifetime, and then you're able to recognize that that more is actually you coming home to you. There is so much beauty in there, but it comes with beast. As to be able to understand that in order for you to experience your highest of highs, you need to meet the darkest of depths. And that life isn't about only experiencing the light, but it is also about experiencing the dark. But the most important thing I think I've learned from that age, and that I would say to her, is that you're not alone. You're not alone. Every single person is going through their own sense of suffering and pain in this world, and their own sense of questioning what is the point moments. And I think what I would say to her, and where she's been led, which is really beautiful, is to be able to remove that sense of shame and judgment from this whole experience, and be able to use it as an experience of inspiration for others, be able to have the permission to be able to explore their own sense of self, and not come in here with any sense of righteousness, but a beautiful space of curiosity where we can guide each other into that space for just, what is access? You know, we're all just walking each other home.
Magic. Absolute magic.
But most importantly and most simply, it's okay. Stop being so hard on yourself. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself. It's okay.
And you can see the emotion in that. Like that's
Yeah, well, I feel like, deriving from this, Greg, at that stage in my life, I thought I was broken. I did. I had anxiety, depression, I'd experienced an eating disorder. I had a beautiful career. I'd finished graduating in 2 degrees. I had a beautiful boyfriend. I lived in the northern beaches in Sydney. Everything was going well. Yet I was anxious and I was depressed. And I thought, how ungrateful am I? But then throughout that whole experience, I realized, no, this isn't about gratitude. This is about something more. And so I'm really now grateful to be able to really recognize that I wasn't broken, but that took someone else's reflection in me to truly understand I didn't get there on my own. And that took the awareness of someone that was further down the path to understand that I'm not crazy, that I'm actually more creative, I'm intuitive, and that I feel a lot, and I sense a lot. And any sense of that anxiety and depression that anyone that may be listening is experiencing, if you were to take this moment to just actually think to yourself, I'm not broken, there's nothing wrong for me in me, but that possibly this was a signal, a message telling you something. In spirit of where we started this, friend, if you were to be brave and courageous enough to actually for a moment sit with self and talk to that sense of dis-ease within the body that's manifesting as anxiety and or depression, what is your body telling you? What is your intuition telling you? What is your heart telling you? And have the courage and bravery to not only listen to that, but to possibly take a step in the direction of being able to not only acknowledge that and accept that, but begin to take action on that and see where your life takes you.
I somehow got to cut this off at some stage, but I've got another question.
Yeah, that's fine. I've got some time.
Because let the listeners know, like that's a good segue into like you were living the life that everyone sort of dreams of in that space.
Yeah.
And remember we talked last time about the hours you're working and going to, you had a very, very, very good job. And
Yeah.
everyone was like, what are you complaining about? And then you have some people go, do a gratitude journal. It's like, that's the love and light, like you said before, love and light bullshit,
Yes.
right? The spiritual
Yes.
bypassing. It's the let's do a gratitude journal, let's do some visualizations, and that's going to make me all better. It's like, no, you need to do you need to go into the dark shit.
Yeah, what just
Which is
came to me when
you gave up a very, very, very good job and a very good position.
I quit my job and broke up with my boyfriend, and I moved to Kenya. Actually, I'd been to Kenya 3 other times volunteering, and I felt all towards there. And in the first week, everything fell apart. And when you spoke to me just then about that, that was the memory that came up. I remember being in Kenya in this like really old house, and there was this lino floor. And I remember there was this deep sense of loneliness. And I was on this lino floor in the fetal position. I couldn't even be on my knees at that point. And I felt so lonely. And I felt so lost. And I thought, what have I done? What have I done? I just gave up everything. And in that moment, it was one of the hardest moments I've ever experienced in my life. It was dark. It was a dark night of the soul. But always in reflection, now that I've been through a couple of those, I've been able to truly appreciate. And I always get a little bit weirdly excited now about moments like these in other people's lives, because I recognize that is what we spoke to. That's the undoing. That's the beautiful undoing of everything you've ever known, to be able to actually start connecting with what you truly know. And that is an ego death. And that can feel like you're living a life of dying in that moment, because it is essentially what is happening. And that's where that sense of trust and faith comes in, and to be able to talk with people that have gone through similar experiences to fully appreciate and understand. Because at that moment in my life, I was new to everything. I didn't know what that meant, and I seriously questioned what the fuck I had done, whether I was really crazy. But now I'm so batshit crazy. Batshit crazy, and also fucking purity of authenticity in that moment, about being able to, I may not know in that moment what I was saying yes to, but I sure as shit knew what I was saying no to. And that's where it took me. And that's where I developed a deeper sense of trust and faith in honoring me and being able to be now in the driver's seat of my life versus succumbing to the comfort in inverted commas of anxiety and depression with the facade of everything that looks brilliant. I say no to that now. Absolutely not. I came to Dubai. I'm in Dubai now because I said yes to a job. The first week I came here, I got to know these certain people on a different level. I embellished immediately the incongruence between values, and I said no. I learned the lesson once and not do it again. Now I'm in Dubai. And I trust I'm meant to be here for a reason, and that was not the reason. That just go with better ways had, but it was a test. And that's the lesson as well. Life will continue to test you. And as you get older, you start to see the pattern of how this works. And it always, you will be so wholly rewarded if you keep coming back to you and honoring the potency, honoring you will not always be the light. It will also be the dark. The darkness is that opportunity for self-expansion. You cannot have light without dark. Do not think that you will have a life without suffering. And in fact, suffering is the gift. So if you are living in a life of comfort where you have not suffered recently at a deep level, not this underlying kind of little bit of anxiety, depression bullshit, but truly fucking suffered, then you need to wake up and start challenging yourself.
Obviously, I'll leave it like that. Like, that's what I'm just going to do. Just... Right. How can people get in touch with you? Have you got any stuff coming up? You got any events, courses, speaking gigs? What have you got coming up? Can actually people book you? You might be booked out. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really in my self-exploratory moment as I transition into moving to a new country. Seventh country I'm moving to, which is exciting. And I mean, that's certainly my spirit, is that free spirit. People can book me for one-on-ones. So obviously one-on-ones is in relation to everything that was spoken about. I do now do couples facilitation. So I facilitate vulnerable and honest conversations between couples. So if you're having trouble being able to...
Can we actually go there next time about that? Yeah, that'd be really good.
And I'm really passionate about it. I feel like I love a dynamic experience. And again, because I really met myself at this place of not asserting my righteousness, I love bringing two people together that love each other, that are just having challenges in not being able to fully open up and speak their truth to one another, and being able to just be a guiding light and a facilitator. You know, I have a little bit of a sharper side to me. So, you know, it's not all easy, but just being able to really keep people responsible and honoring their sense of truth and living that sense of courage and bravery. And then I do group facilitation that is very similar to the couples, and that I facilitate vulnerable conversations with the goal of deeper connection with actually finding that worth of high-achieving individuals. Because sort of what we spoke to, right? A lot of these high achievers are living these superficial lives. How you going good? How's the kids good? How, you know, all of this stuff. But what's really happening underneath? And so I actually do group facilitation. I've been doing it with men recently, where I get them in a group and we'll actually go a lot deeper to ensure that there's a deeper sense of connection in people's not only work life, but their peer life. That they're actually being able to open up more about what life's really about and what's really going on. And I've seen some really beautiful transformational work that's happened in that realm. So those are the options at the moment. No courses or anything. I find it really hard to develop a course because I'm constantly evolving, expanding, and it's difficult to kind of sit still with everything that I think. But
you're doing what you're doing right now is perfect.
Yeah, I love it.
Whatever you're doing now is the perfection.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, you can reach out to me. I have a website that is my name, Jennah-Louise.com, and Instagram is really easy as well.
I'll put links down below. All right.
JL,
thank you. And so
thank you so much.
Reach out to her.
And even if you just want to say hello or anything like that, any reflections even on this conversation, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks. All right. We'll see you guys later.
Beautiful. Thanks, Greg.